The small town of Maplewood was known for its quiet streets, friendly residents, and picturesque scenery. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names, and where it was safe to leave your doors unlocked at night. But recently, the town had become the site of unnerving events that would shake its residents to their very core. It all started when a series of mysterious disappearances began plaguing the town. It started with the pets, then moved on to the children. No one knew what was happening or who was responsible for it, but soon enough, the town was gripped with fear, and the residents barricaded themselves in their homes, afraid to venture out at night. Jessica, a 25-year-old nurse who had just moved to Maplewood a few months ago, was one of the few brave enough to keep working at the local hospital despite the horrors that were happening around her. Her colleagues had all quit their jobs, and the hospital was operating with minimum staff. But Jessica refused to abandon her patients. One night, as she was walking back to her apartment after work, she heard a strange noise coming from an alley. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, but then she heard it again, and this time it was louder. Jessica cautiously made her way towards the source of the sound, when suddenly something grabbed her from behind. She tried to scream, but a hand covered her mouth and prevented her from making a sound. Jessica struggled to break free, but her attacker was too strong. Then a familiar voice whispered in her ear. "Jessica, it's me, Kyle. Don't be scared," the voice said, and Jessica immediately recognized her neighbor's voice. Kyle had always been a bit odd, but Jessica never suspected him of being capable of something like this. She tried to pull away from him, but he held her tightly. "Please, Kyle, let me go," Jessica pleaded. "What are you doing?" "I had to show you something. Come with me," Kyle said, and dragged her into the alley. Jessica's heart was pounding, and she was terrified of what Kyle had in store for her. She tried to stop him, but he was determined to show her what he had found in the town cemetery. As they entered the cemetery, Kyle led her to a grave that had been dug up. Jessica gasped in horror when she saw what was inside. There, lying on the ground, was a mutilated body of a child. The sight was ghastly, and Jessica felt sick to her stomach. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. "What the hell is this, Kyle? Who did this?" she asked, horrified. "I don't know," Kyle replied, his voice shaking with fear. "But I have a feeling that it's not human." Jessica didn't know what to make of Kyle's words. She couldn't believe that someone would do something like this. They had to call the police, she thought. They had to do something to stop whoever was responsible for these heinous acts. Suddenly, they heard a rustling noise coming from the nearby trees. They turned to see what was causing it when a figure appeared out of nowhere. It was tall and had an inhumanly long arm that reached towards them. Jessica and Kyle screamed and ran in opposite directions, hoping to escape their attacker. They ran for what felt like hours until they were both completely exhausted. When they finally stopped, they realized they had lost each other. Jessica was alone and scared, but she knew she had to keep going. She had to find her way back home and call for backup. As she walked through the deserted streets of Maplewood, she saw that the town had been completely transformed. The serene scenery was now replaced with chaos and destruction. The houses were destroyed, and the once friendly residents were nowhere to be found. Jessica realized that she was in the middle of a supernatural apocalypse, and that her world would never be the same again. She didn't know what the future held, but she was determined to survive, to fight for what was left of her life. She had to find a way to stop the inhuman monster, whatever it was, before it destroyed everything she knew and loved. Jessica's heart was racing as she made her way towards her apartment. She knew she had to be careful to avoid drawing the attention of the creature that was terrorizing the town. As she walked, she thought about Kyle and wondered if he was okay. She hoped that he had managed to get away from the creature and find safety. But her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden movement from behind her. She turned around and saw the creature standing in the middle of the street, its long arm reaching towards her. Jessica gasped and tried to run, but she stumbled and fell to the ground. The creature was getting closer, and Jessica knew she had to do something. She remembered the self-defense classes she had taken in college and tried to remember the moves. As the creature approached her, Jessica used all her strength to kick it in the stomach.